I've just been looking at this video by, excuse me, by a user called theSkepticalAtheist, who I haven't come across before. It's a really nice video on free will and determinism. But at the start of it, he gives this information which apparently came from Claude Shannon, the information theorist, and some of the data by somebody else. I didn't catch that name. And he's talking about chess and chessboards, and how the the game of chess, when you think about it, it seems pretty infinite. But it's not completely infinite. It's got a limited number of pieces and a limited number of rules. So although the number of possible games of chess there are is very, very high, and the figures that Skeptical Atheist quoted was in a range somewhere between 10 to the power of 43 and 10 to the power of 57, huge, huge numbers of possible games of chess, nevertheless it's still limited. And then he goes on to talk about the implications of that for the universe. It's really interesting, actually. But I'm just imagining these chessboards, 10 to the power, let's say 10 to the power of 50. I'll split the difference between those two figures. 10 to the power, that's 10 multiplied by itself 50 times, which is, a pretty big number. But I'm just kind of visualizing this. What would it look like if there were that many chessboards laid out? All these chessboards, 10 to the power of 50, 10 times 10 with all those zeros laid after it, all laid out, perhaps in some sort of grid on a two-dimensional surface, or maybe laid out in space, kind of three-dimensionally arranged in space. But they wouldn't be randomly arranged. I beg your pardon. So in each one of these games would have on it, I'm not quite sure how you would do it. Yeah, each chessboard would be going through the moves that it goes through. You know what I mean? So that at a click of a finger, each different chess game on each separate board advances one move, and then the next second, let's say, the next move happens, then the next move happens. So all these games are being played simultaneously on 10 to the power of 50 chessboards. Clunk, 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 like that. And as I say, these things are all arranged in space. But they wouldn't be arranged randomly in space. They'd be arranged in such a way that the games which are most like each other are closest together. So there'd be some games which are almost exactly the same, except the very last move. I don't know chess well enough to know if that makes sense, but they're almost exactly the same. The patterns of moves are exactly the same until the final couple of moves, and then there's a difference. Then they part company. But otherwise, those two games are very similar, and they'd be quite close to each other in this weird sort of chess space. Whereas other games, one of which will be a kind of fool's mate, and one of which is some really complicated game that goes on for hours and hours, they'd be quite separated from one another in this kind of weird chess space. So these things are all like a kind of parallel chess games, in a kind of a universe of parallel chess games, each one separated by another by the minimum distance that the number of pieces and the rules allow. Because obviously you couldn't, it'd be digital, because there wouldn't be two games that'd be touching each other, because there are constraints to the amount of difference there can be between one game and the next. So each game would be next to each other, but not overlapping or not smushing into each other. Okay, so I've got this weird space full of three-dimensional space full of chessboards, all advancing one move at a time, and all arranged so that they are minimally separated from one another. Okay, I guess now I'm just imagining what it would be like to move through this space. So you're moving from one game to the parallel chessboard next door, to the parallel chessboard next door to that, and to the parallel chessboard next to that. I don't know. It's a kind of multiverse thing. That probably doesn't make any sense. Never mind.